Police reports aren't usually stories you want to hear at night, but every so often, something happens that even officers can't explain. Ordinary calls, ordinary neighborhoods, ordinary people. And yet, when the sirens arrive, when the officers enter the scene, nothing is as it seems. These aren't legends. They're real cases filed in official police reports. And tonight, we're going to go over 3 disturbing true horror stories. The kind of stories that make you lock your doors and double-check your windows. Stories where the normal, everyday world suddenly stops making sense. Make sure you're sitting down, because the first story starts right now. It was around 2:30 a.m. when the call came into the dispatch center. The line clicked once, then nothing, just silence. At first, the dispatcher thought it was a misdial. It happens all the time. People half asleep, pressing the wrong buttons. But something about the line made her pause. The static wasn't normal. There was a faint rustling, a sound almost like fabric brushing against furniture. She leaned forward, pressing the headset tighter to her ear. "Hello?" she said cautiously. Heavy breathing. Nothing else. The dispatcher waited, counting slowly in her head, when a whisper finally came through. "There's someone in my house." Her voice was trembling, quiet but panicked. "Ma'am, where are you?" the dispatcher asked, trying to remain calm. She repeated her address. Then, abruptly, a loud crash echoed through the receiver. Something heavy falling, glass shattering. Her scream pierced the line for just a second, then silence. The dispatcher's fingers flew across the keyboard, alerting the nearest units. Patrol cars were dispatched immediately, lights spinning into the night as officers raced toward the quiet suburban street. When they arrived, the scene seemed wrong. The front door was wide open. The porch light was still on, flickering slightly. Inside, the living room looked completely untouched. The couch cushions were in place, the TV still playing a late-night talk show. The coffee table had a single cup of cold tea, the cup sitting perfectly upright. No footprints, no signs of forced entry. Officers moved cautiously through the house. Every creak of the hardwood floor sounded amplified in the silence. Upstairs, doors were closed, but nothing appeared out of place. It was as if no one had been there at all. Back at the dispatch center, the call recorder showed the line had never disconnected. The dispatcher could hear the faint static humming, but nothing else. No voice, no movement. Minutes stretched into an hour. The neighborhood was quiet, apart from the spinning sirens fading into distance. The woman never came back on the line. She never answered any subsequent calls. Weeks later, the officers would review the call recording again, frame by frame. Somewhere in the static, they could hear a soft whisper, so quiet it almost blended with the hum of the lines. "I'm still here." No one ever found her. No trace. The dispatcher keeps the recording locked away now, playing it only when she wants to remind herself that sometimes the things we call unexplainable might be closer than we think. This call ended with more questions than answers, but it wasn't over yet. Now, the second story comes from a remote stretch of highway, a place where even the police weren't prepared for what they found. This is a story of a man, a car, and a night that would make officers question what's really out there. It was a freezing night in late December when police received a call from a motorist stranded on a rural highway. The man sounded tense, his voice quivering slightly over the line. "My car just stopped. I can't get it started. Please, can someone come?" The dispatcher asked for his location. He gave it clearly, but there was something in his tone, almost a hesitation, like he wasn't entirely comfortable giving directions. Within minutes, a patrol car was dispatched. The roads were nearly empty, save for the occasional snowplow gliding past. Headlights cut through the darkness, bouncing off the frost-covered fields. When the officers arrived at the reported location, the first thing they noticed was the car. It was parked on the side of the highway, engine off, hazard lights blinking faintly in the cold, but the vehicle was completely empty. The driver? Gone. The doors were unlocked. Inside, there was a folded piece of paper sitting neatly on the passenger seat. The note read, in slightly shaky handwriting, Help me. They're outside. The officers immediately scanned the surrounding area. Fields stretched on either side. Not a single figure. Not even footprints in the freshly fallen snow. One of the officers bent down to inspect the vehicle more closely. The car doors were intact. No signs of tampering. No evidence of anyone having forcibly entered or exited the vehicle. The dispatcher received another call from the same man. Except this time, his voice sounded different. Older, harsher, distorted, panicked, but calmer somehow, as if the terror he had first felt had been replaced with something else entirely. Officers drove slowly up and down the highway, flashlights sweeping across the snow-covered fields and tree lines. Nothing, absolutely nothing. As they returned to the vehicle, one of the patrolmen noticed a faint scratch along the hood. Not deep, just enough to peel off a thin layer of paint. Then another on the driver's side door, and another on the roof. It almost looked like something or someone had run their hands along the car, climbing over it. The note had vanished. Officers checked the call logs and discovered that the phone the motorist had used to call them wasn't registering as active. It had been disconnected days earlier. Weeks later, the car was towed to a nearby garage for inspection. Scratch marks covered every panel. But the vehicle was otherwise functional. The tires bore no extra footprints. The snow outside was untouched. The man? Never found. There were no witnesses. No reports of anyone matching his description. Nothing. The patrol officers left the scene that night uneasy, driving away in silence. Behind them, the snow-covered highways stretched endlessly, dark and empty. And in their reports, the only note they could leave, after all the facts, the scratches, and the empty car, was simply, the victim vanished. No signs of entry or exit. No explanation. Case remains open. Some nights, dispatchers say they still receive late-night calls from that stretch of highway, calls that don't show up on any phone line, calls that fade before anyone can answer. And when the officers pass that road, even years later, the air feels wrong. The first two police reports left officers uneasy, but the third case was different. What started as a routine call in a quiet suburban neighborhood became something no one could explain. This is a third and final disturbing true horror story reported by the Pollock. It was a cold, quiet night when officers were dispatched to a suburban home. Neighbors had called after hearing unusual noises, footsteps, whispers, and what sounded like furniture being moved. The caller was hesitant, nervous, but insisted someone was in the house. When the patrol officers arrived, the street was silent. Snow covered the lawns, and the only light came from the dim glow of a street lamp. Everything seemed ordinary, too ordinary. The house itself looked perfectly normal. A beige two-story with a white picket fence, a tidy lawn, and the faint hum of a heater through the windows. The front door was closed, no signs of forced entry, no footprints leading to it. The officers exchanged wary glances. Probably a false alarm, one said quietly, though neither sounded convinced. They stepped onto the porch, the boards creaking beneath their boots. Officer Reynolds reached for the doorknob, flashlight illuminating the doorframe. The handle turned smoothly. Nothing was locked. Inside, the house was silent. Every room appeared untouched. The living room had the usual furniture, a couch, a love seat, a coffee table with magazines neatly stacked. A lamp cast a faint glow across the room, but it did little to dispel the shadows. Then Officer Harris noticed something on the floor. A single pair of small children's shoes, placed neatly side by side in the center of the room. No other items disturbed. No signs of struggle. Nothing else seemed out of place. "That's odd," Reynolds whispered. The flashlight beam hovered over the shoes. Why would someone leave them here? Moving upstairs, the officers noticed a soft creak of the steps beneath their boots. A bedroom door at the end of the hallway was slightly ajar. They approached cautiously. Inside, the child's bedroom looked untouched. The bed was made neatly, toys arranged as if frozen in time. But the blanket had been folded into a perfect triangle on the pillow, and faint handprints pressed into the fabric suggested that someone had been holding it down just moments before. Officers called out, their voices echoing softly through the hallway. Silence. They moved through the rest of the upstairs, checking each room carefully. Every closet door open to reveal nothing. Every window checked, locked, everything normal. Too normal. Returning to the living room, Reynolds and Harris began a detailed sweep of the house. That's when they noticed subtle details. A chair slightly angled, a magazine on the floor that hadn't been there earlier, and the faint smell of perfume in the air, though no one had been home to wear it. They radioed the dispatcher for backup. While waiting, they documented everything meticulously, noting the lack of footprints, the undisturbed furniture, and the handprints on the blanket. 30 minutes passed. Nothing. No one came forward. No sounds, no signs. Only the faint hum of the heater and the occasional creak of the house settling. Just as the officers began to leave, a sudden movement caught Harris's eye. In the corner of the living room, a shadow shifted. They both froze. The silhouette was indistinct, but it moved against the wall. "Did you see that?" Harris whispered. Reynolds nodded slowly. They approached cautiously, flashlights sweeping the corner. Nothing. Empty. Later, reviewing their notes, the officers admitted the shadow had seemed impossible. No furniture had been there to cast it. The angle of the light, the shape of the wall, it shouldn't have happened. They left the house, locking the door behind them, but the feeling of unease stayed. Weeks later, the parents returned from vacation. They confirmed that the house had been empty the entire time. They had left windows and doors locked, alarms active. No one had entered, nothing stolen, nothing damaged. Yet, when asked about the child's shoes, they said they had no idea where they came from. The handprints? They had never been there. The officers filed a report. Their notes were careful, detailed, factual. And yet, every person involved admitted to an unnerving sensation. Something that can't be written down. A lingering awareness that the house wasn't as empty as it seemed. Some nights, the dispatcher says, officers still pass that street. They claim the air feels heavier. The house feels wrong. And when the neighbors walk by, they sometimes catch a glimpse of a faint shadow in the window, though no one is home. The final note in the police report simply read, "No forced entry, no footprints, house empty, yet evidence suggests someone or something was here." These 3 cases are just a few of the thousands reported to police each year. Ordinary neighborhoods, ordinary people, ordinary nights. And yet, even in the most mundane places, unexplainable things happen. Things that leave law enforcement scratching their heads. If you hear a noise when no one should be there, if you see shadows where nothing belongs, remember these stories. Sometimes, reality is far scarier than fiction, and some doors are better left closed.